Right, I'm going to show my age here. Back in the 70s, there was a TV series called Kung Fu, and some of you will remember it. In it, a very young David Carradine played the lead, and he was a young, monk learning the ways of the world under this martial arts master. And the master used this phrase at one stage: "Choose wisely, grasshopper." Sage advice indeed. He was teaching the young guy how to be at one with the world and all that type of stuff, okay? But it's actually sage advice that I think we need to take on board ourselves, and it's advice that we should be considering giving to our own children. Because when we came out of school back in the day, and when our children come out of school now, we were taught then, and still taught today in the educational system, to think in terms of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think that's a flawed paradigm. I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be whatever it might be. But if we extrapolate being a doctor, by way of example, out 30, 40, 50 years, that's a long time to be anything if that being doesn't give you the lifestyle that you want. Now, let's not confuse lifestyle with earning big bucks, because most doctors, I expect, earn good money, happy days, and they deserve the six-figure income. The challenge is, for the first number of years, I'm quite sure that it's very rewarding. But after 10, 20, 30 or 40 years, perhaps for that individual, it becomes tiresome. Yes, they still earn the big bucks. They're also seen as the doctor, and they've got to have the doctor's lifestyle. And to maintain the doctor's lifestyle at a leverage factor of 1, we spoke about the leverage factor in last week's vlog, they must continue to turn up to put in the 50, 60, 70 hours a week in a high pressure environment to earn the big bucks. And if that's what they want to do, great. But I think we make those decisions very early in life as to what we want to be in life, without thinking through the impact on how our lives will look when we get there down the track. I much prefer to get people to think in terms of how they'd like their life to look. And so, for example, if somebody decides that in the next 5 or 10 years they'd like to have more time off and still earn good money, well, they've got to find how to do that. They've got to learn different ways of doing that. If somebody decides leaving school that they actually want lots of time off, I would much sooner recommend that they become a school teacher than become a medical doctor. They won't earn as much as a school teacher as a medical doctor, but they also won't be putting in the hours that a medical doctor puts in. So it really is important that we ask ourselves what way we want our lives to look. And once we know what way we want our lives to look, well, then we work backwards from there to ask ourselves, well, what profession, what way of earning a crust in this world will give that to me? Ask themselves honestly, the path that I'm on, is that ever likely to give it to me? And if not, I recommend that they make some changes. For me, back in the day, I didn't know anything but to become employed. I didn't go to college, so I became employed. My dad was an employee, his dad was an employee, and that's all I knew. But over the years I began to ask myself, how did some people get ahead and others not? I began to study business principles, and I learned about the difference between an employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. And when I took stock of where I was and where my life was and where I wanted it to be and how I wanted it to look, I realized that I didn't want to be an employee, and I also didn't want to be self-employed. So therefore I needed to be willing to learn the skills associated with becoming a business owner and an investor, and that's all I've done. And so what I recommend you consider doing is take some time this next week to take stock of where you are. Ask yourself the question, am I living the life that I really want? And if you're not, ask yourself, well, what does the life I really want look like? Then ask yourself, what I do to earn a crust today, will that give that to me? And if the answer to that is no, be honest with yourself. If it's no, find a way of taking a step towards the life that you really want. And the first thing I recommend you consider doing, if you're not already doing it, is begin by reading a personal development or a business development book for 10 minutes every day. Your business can never outgrow you. You can never get ahead of yourself. So I recommend, as a starting point, consider reading 10 minutes per day. And thank you for joining me today for this Coffee with Colm, Choose Wisely Grasshopper. If you've enjoyed what you heard and you want to leave us a comment, well, you know what to do. Go to the bottom of the blog and leave us something. We always love hearing from you. The objective behind this series of Coffees with Colm is whereby I take a snippet from my book, Feeding Johnny How to Build a Business Despite the Roadblocks, discuss the snippet and the lessons contained therein over a cup of coffee, for about 5 minutes or so on a weekly basis, in the hopes that by me sharing my business journey out there for you, that it will in fact afford you a shortcut where back in the day I had none. If you think somebody else would benefit, well then please pass the link on privately or publicly. We'd love to get the word out there. So if there's somebody else of like mind, send this off to them, please. If it's your first time stumbling across a Coffee with Colm, you've been very welcome, and I hope you got something from it. And if you'd like more of this type of stuff, pop to the homepage, colmobrienmotivation.com, leave us your details and we'll send you this type of stuff on a weekly basis. Consider what I've shared here today. Apply it into your thinking for the next week or so. Come back next week, most importantly, for another coffee, where we'll take another snippet from the book, share it out there and see where it leads. In the meantime, have a great week. Top class. And choose wisely, grasshopper.